Hi, and welcome to CFO Insight TV. The European trading scheme for carbon emissions is unraveling. Initially created to make companies pay for their carbon emissions, it is suffering from a glut of free permits. Today, we'll be discussing the implications of this for CFOs, and I'm delighted to welcome to the studio Andreas von Saldern. He's an executive director of climate change and sustainability at Ernst Young, Germany. The European carbon trading scheme, which was set up to create a market for carbon emissions, has been plagued by a glut of unforeseen free permits. Many critics say now the scheme is broken. Do you agree?
No, I don't agree. The system did work as it should. In the moment, the the economy was not producing as much as possible and therefore emitted less CO2. The price went down, and that's what it should do.
There's, of course, other reasons why CFOs have energy efficiency on their agenda, and one of them is actually new rules being drafted and implemented by such rule-setting bodies as the IASB. They are drafting rules for sustainability and reporting, and they're actually trying to force companies to report on these on their carbon footprint. Yes. Can you say, or can you give us a prediction of by what time we'll actually have a firm set of rules that will force companies to report their carbon footprint?
I would say that the pressure on carbon emissions will reduce a bit during the next years, and much more will be the focus energy efficiency. So carbon footprint is typically the tip of an iceberg, while energy efficiency is a much larger burden on companies. So when they improve their energy efficiency, then they normally improve their carbon footprint as well. So my prediction is that we will see a lot of pressure on companies to become more energy efficient than we have in the past, and by that they will solve their carbon emissions as well.
But will they be forced by the ASB, IFRS rules, for example, to report on their carbon footprint and if and when they're publicly listed?
We already have starts which are coming close to this, and I would guess within the next, let's say, 5 years that will come.
Aside from the obvious cost savings that companies and CFOs can achieve through energy efficiency, what other reasons are there really for a CFO to think about this as an issue for the CFO?
I think it's in a world where the energy prices are so volatile and energy is becoming a scarce good, and the price predictions are climbing, that energy efficiency is one, if not the competitive advantage. And if we face the competition here in Central Europe with the international competition in the BRICS member states, those countries have a larger growth, which means they have the newer installations, which typically are much more energy efficient than the old energy installations. And in order to maintain competitiveness, the Central European producers have to overcompensate the energy efficiency increase in the new installations. So they have to really have very strong efforts. They need strong efforts to get an energy efficiency here in the old installation, while it's much easier to have a new one.
What are the typical levers that a company and a CFO can pull to increase their efficiency? I mean, typical levers, but maybe not obvious ones that you find in your experience.
I think if you look in Europe, we're discussing energy efficiency regulations in the area of 1 to 2% annual improvement. If you look at the market leaders, they themselves set them goals by 5 to 6% improvement per year. That can typically not be achieved by continuous improvement. You have to rethink, you redesign your process, you have to reinvent your products. And that typically is not only possible if you look at the limits, at the boundaries of your company. You have to widen your view to look at the suppliers, at the following supply chain, and then you get much more possibilities for improvement.
Many companies, they leave the management of their carbon permits, they leave them to engineers or some environment officer, and it's seldom the CFO who's in charge of this. Do you think that's a good arrangement?
I don't think so, because we had clients which had billions in their accounts and didn't realize it because they were put into the account at zero value because they got the emission rights for free. So the CFO had no control what was happening there. He was not aware of the risk, and when the price dropped in some years ago from 36 euro down to 8 euro, the company was burning hundreds of thousand euros per week, and they didn't realize because the book value was beforehand zero and it was still zero. So from the book value, they didn't have any loss.
I want to wrap up this interview with 3 questions, yes or no questions I would like to ask you,
Okay.
to simply answer them with a yes, no if possible. Will the European trading scheme still exist 5 years from now?
I guess so, yes.
Will carbon emissions become so expensive that it will drive companies out of Europe?
I don't think so, because I think the energy efficiency will be increased, so the carbon prices will maintain low.
Will we ever get to a point, maybe in the next 5 years, where the carbon footprint of European companies tends towards zero?
In some areas, yes.
Thank you very much for joining us here at CFO Insight TV. And thank you very much for watching.